And we're live.
Okay, welcome everyone to our third meeting of the City Efficiency Committee relating to the budget. We have a quorum. I think we're just missing Brian, who I think plans to be here. Called meeting to order. Anything else technically we need to do about that? All right.
Oh, sorry, we should do a roll call.
Oh, that's right. Perfect timing, Brian.
Sorry, I'm late.
Ernesto, you want to start?
Sorry, I spaced out. Start with what?
Roll
Just
call.
your name.
Just
Roll
name.
call, Ernesto.
Bryce Peterson.
Ryan Dempster.
Todd Granito.
Eric Frisk.
Michael Gay. Kathy Gordon.
Brian Moore.
Josh Eggleston.
Kylie Leinenbach.
Brian Johnston. You want to do others in the room?
Yeah. Welcome everybody who's here in addition to the committee. Love to hear who you are and what department you're from.
Sure, but what you please? Brian Gross is fire chief, Sam Fire.
David Both, Fire Chief.
Rachel Ashburn, just concerned citizen. Mayor. Linda Nishio, City Council.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Is anybody here from the public? Would you like to make a comment?
No, the comment you received by email pretty much sums up my feelings as well and more eloquently. So.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. The comment I think you're referring to, and we'll acknowledge, I'm going to take a stab at it. Dr. Stacy Vieira Brendel. Okay. Okay. I haven't had a chance to review that yet, but I'll do that before our next meeting. So I don't, but it would be good for all of us to make sure we've reviewed that and have some thoughts to share as we have them. So I ask you to do that before our next meeting. I don't think we have any action items other than something I'd like to do before we get into information that you brought, Josh and others have. I'm assuming we're going to hear from fire and police today. Is that right?
And we're expecting enterprise services too.
Okay, wonderful. What I'd like to do is, technically, this is our third of 4 meetings. I'd like to create a roadmap of how we intend to do our job for the council and make some decisions about what we want to do and when we plan to do it. And if we think we need to have any more meetings other than our last one this week to be able to deliver that. Can you give us a sense of, ultimately, I know that our intent is to provide something to the city council in terms of a recommendation. What does that calendar look like, and when might be times that we could do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of this committee set up and concluding your work so early was that we could get something docketed for city council, hopefully for their February 24th meeting. So the second meeting in February. If you're unable to meet that meeting, if you need additional time, I mean, one logistical piece is, I think, depending on what we talk about at our next meeting and who might be invited, we're going to very, very quickly hit our 60-hour max. We'll have to ask for some additional time from city council, which is perfectly fine. We can do that. We can make that request. I just want to be mindful of that. So if we schedule a meeting for next week, we might not be able to accomplish it just with our staff time limitation. But otherwise, yeah, we'd be looking for some summary document with recommendations and hopefully a brief presentation from the chair or other representatives from the committee at that February 24th meeting.
And do we have to have something prepared and submitted in advance of that meeting by a certain date?
Yeah, good question. So for February 24th, we produce and send out the packet on the 19th to the city council. So we would really need something really finalized by the 14th, and that's pushing the city recorder's office just a little bit.
Okay.
So to finalize this report, are we allowed to meet ad hoc by the rules of the public engagement or?
No, not
No.
necessarily. You could have a subcommittee, but we'd want to notice it and it would be another public meeting. And it would have to be less than the quorum. So we'd prefer it to stay in this
We have
format
to
if
make it
possible.
here, right?
Yes.
Make recommendations here. The next meeting is this week, right?
Yeah, right.
Just for
Friday.
quorum, I will be gone. I need to go to DC this week, so I'll be
One,
absent. I don't know if you can log in via online.
I mean, that's what I was gonna say. Now that they are on YouTube and Zoom, you could log in remotely if
Oh,
you'd like
good.
to.
Yeah, so I will try to do that.
Anybody else know that they won't be here Friday? Okay. All right, well, I know part of our answer to this question will be informed by the conversation we had today, but just want to take the temperature of the group to see, do you think from where, well, let's take a step back and talk about what we started to talk about last time, which what do we see being what we deliver? And we had talked about it being largely a set of questions that, given the time we have, it's unlikely that we're going to come up with in a 2-week period a bunch of solutions. And I think that's, I want to make sure it's clear to this group and anybody observing that when we talk about questions, we're exploring. And I haven't heard anything from this group yet that suggests adamant advocacy for a particular path, as much as I've heard a lot of questions asked in the pursuit of trying to be helpful toward the task we've been given. So I think we're going to continue down that path, and as we may in that process come up with some very specific recommendations, but I got the feeling from this group that we saw it predominantly as coming up with the right questions to ask to inform further discussion. First, I want to check the temperature and make sure that that's consistent with what this group is feeling right now.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree.
Okay. So we've started that list of questions, and maybe Callie, between this meeting and the next meeting, could you put those in maybe one succinct list for us, or have you already got it?
So 5B in the additions agenda is such a list.
Okay, perfect.
So we, given the timing remaining, we thought it'd be good to start somewhere. So this is your list so far. So you're welcome to change it, wordsmith it, however you'd like. We want to make sure we at least captured what you had so far.
And they're not in the question format, so if that's more appeasing to the committee, we can definitely switch things up.
I like the questions, just because if I'm a member of the public and I just read this, what I'm going to think is that this committee decided reduce overtime. And I don't know that that's something we necessarily concluded. I think that we saw it as a potential place to see some efficiencies, but I wouldn't want it perceived as the conclusion is that's it, that's the place, that's where the efficiency is, go get that overtime. And I'm happy to work on that with you if it would be helpful just to phrase them as questions.
Well, I think I'd also add, I think Josh's explanation of some of the overtime issues helped us understand a more broader perspective. So I feel like I was kind of asked and answered
Okay.
on some of that. So,
And ultimately, this is the list we're
yeah.
gonna,
I mean, it's still something to pay
Whittle
attention
down.
to, but you know, the fire overtime, the police overtime, I think he gave us pretty good answers as to where they come from. And so,
Yeah.
You could document it as, here's questions we had and we
Yeah.
got answers back from the city, Josh and the team
Yeah.
from all the work that were explored.
yeah, because I think one of the potential outcomes and what we end up presenting to the council is these are exactly that. These are a lot of the questions we asked. And, you know, among the possibilities of the outcomes is, while we pursued efficiencies in all 10 of these areas, we're struggling to find efficiencies available in 8 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be, if I'm in their shoes, that would be useful to me too. But and this moment, I'm not necessarily feeling like we have to solve that list, but thank you, Callie, for preparing the list. And I think we'll just continue to add to it. And then what I would envision is that one of us will take a stab at putting our conclusions in writing and circulate it for the review of the group to see if it's consistent with the conclusions we want to present. Do you agree with that approach?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that we are going to need more than today and Friday to get there? And we can answer that later, but I think
So
it's a
there are two
question.
answers. For comprehensive solution, we need more time. For a solutions proposed, I think we need to wrap it up in the time we are allowed.
Okay.
For good or bad. And those are just recommendations.
Yeah.
We don't have power to make decisions. So that's my opinion. I don't know. You guys.
Others?
I don't think we're gonna need extra time. I think, I mean, with the depth that we're going, which is just the surface of things, I mean, I think by Friday, we should have a pretty good idea.
In terms of quorum rules, et cetera, how does it work? Presumably what we talk about on Friday will want to be reflected in whatever written documentation we provide. So that would mean something being written after Friday, and then circulating means another quorum, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I could see a couple options there. We could actually have live, like we could have a document up, for you to review on Friday during your meeting. We can adjust in real time and finalize it that way. The other option would be staff could circulate it and kind of get an idea if people are okay with it. The other option would be we convene a short additional meeting, even if it's, a half-hour virtual meeting to review the document. That could be a potential also.
Could we have the document in advance for us all to review and then put public comments? I'm just not sure what's permitted.
So that was one of our attempts, just putting the ideas out
Got
there
it.
today, is be able to get, hey, this should stay on, this other one should come off. So we can keep track of that today. We can certainly make an effort to circulate something, given that today is Tuesday and Friday is pretty quick. But yeah, if you come to that meeting with your thoughts on what that might include, we could, probably make more of a dent in getting that document completed.
Well, are you suggesting then that we write it between now and Friday and resolve it at Friday, or that we write it after Friday and circulate it for discussion?
I don't
next
have an
week?
answer to that. I think we have to see what happens today. I'm very excited for the guests we have today.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll just say my thoughts are, let's see what we have today. Let's see where we're at the end of the day. I suspect we're Friday. Won't have anything written, but maybe. Somebody would.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for those thoughts. We'll come back to that question at the end of the meeting. At this point, should we turn it over to our guests to
Yeah, absolutely.
make presentations?
Yeah, or if you have any questions on materials that are in the packet, feel free to reach out and just let me know. Just given our time today, I think we should turn it over to the
I would agree.
guests. Chiefs, did you figure out who's going first? Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Given the limited, I would just say, given the limited time frame that you all have, I'd really rather just get directly into your areas of interest or questions rather than try to come up with something to say. So if you have some initial thoughts you're interested or curious about, I'd rather hear those now so I could just try to answer those first. But I have some general things I could say also, but I think maybe we start there first, if that's okay. People have certain areas. Is it overtime? Is it staffing? Is it, or what are the things about police that you're interested as far as knowing more to make kind of these efficiency decisions?
I have two questions. If you can give us utilization rate of police work, or are you 100% utilized? Do you have capacity for more work?
No,
No, good,
Yeah. And I'll give a
Yeah.
quick example is we have the same number of budgeted officers today that we did 17 years ago, and things have changed. So that just kind of gives you a picture. You're doing more with less for a long time. And I just January, right last month, collapsed my downtown bike team that doesn't exist anymore. And I did that to staff the core service of patrol. So there's no more room to add anything. We're in the position of continually retracting and pulling back, which puts me in a very tough position, but also stresses our community highly with the service that we're not able to provide.
And second question is, I heard you guys are gonna empower all your officers to enforce traffic laws. So I really like that because I think that's instilling rule of law in the streets. Do you think that will reduce your workload or increase it? Because I suspect people break the traffic laws, break other ones too.
So that's really about
And will it bring
Easy,
additional revenue?
easy, Ernesto.
That's really for me, that's about strategic planning. And if you have limited resources, where do you focus those resources? And so we've identified traffic safety because we had a record high number of fatal collisions last year. We had 22 people die on our streets in Salem last year, highest ever. We're going in the wrong direction. So as a chief, I'm trying to reprioritize existing resources to focus more on traffic safety. It's going to come at the expense of other things, but we're going to prioritize traffic safety. So
you don't
we're
think it will
encouraging
increase
or
efficiencies?
well,
necessarily?
if there's less fatals, that will free up time for sure. And those are intense, crazy investigations, not to mention the dramatic impact on the community and the family. But just as far as me, it's very resource intensive to investigate fatal collisions. If we can lower those, it's going to free up time. But it's always about just prioritizing that as a goal for our department and having every officer on patrol trying to find time to make traffic enforcement efforts when they can in between calls for service.
I think I saw in the annual report, you have like between 27 and 80 open positions. Or
That
would
was
you
one of the recommendations.
frame
That's
that?
interesting. So
Okay.
we're authorized 196 sworn staff. That's from me all the way down all ranks. And I actually tried to anticipate some of these questions, and so I don't know if I'm allowed to send anything out.
Sure.
Okay,
So I just asked it.
I have just kind of a breakdown of our number with the way the ranks fall out. Sorry, you can see this here. So I'll just talk, but I'll at least give you something to kind of take home with you or look at. So the 196 sworn. At the executive level, there's a chief and 3 deputy chiefs. Then there's kind of these mid-managers, these lieutenant ranks. Then there's the people that do the real work, the line supervisors, the sergeants, and the officers. That's where the bulk of the staffing is. So we have I also get questions occasionally about, are we too top heavy and what's our supervision ratio? So you can see our line supervisor to our officer ratio, 1 to 6.3, I think it is, which is right in line with industry standards and where we should be, right? We're not top heavy when it comes to line level supervision. You have to have those supervisors. We've also sworn in 70 police officers in the past 4 years. I've only been here 4 years and I've sworn in 70 police officers. That's 1/3 of our workforce is less than 4 years in the job. So it's also a need for strong supervision to lower risk and to train and prepare people. So there's really a need to maintain that supervision rate from my perspective. So it just gives you a little snapshot of the organization.
How many positions would you say are open
There's
currently?
12 vacancies. So
Okay.
we've been through a story. I should share this story from Seattle from you. I saw today, but they hired 80 something last year and they netted 1. So we hired 23 officers last year and I think we netted 1 also. So we've been dealing with nationally, right? It's not just Salem. So coming out of George Floyd and COVID and right. So our applicant pool tanked from 300 to 400 applicants at a time to 30. And our attrition rate exploded, right? Everybody who could retire did retire. For the first time in my career, I saw people with 7, 8 years on the job just say, you know what, police work's not for me. I'm going to do something else, just quit. And so that's changing. That is changing. But what it did is it got us in a hole. At our low point, we had 26 vacancies for an agency of 196 sworn, 26 vacancies. Very hard to deal with. Now we're down to 12. So we're clawing our way out of this hole. And we're hiring over 20 officers a year for 3 years straight now, which is record level hiring. So we don't have a hiring problem. We still have a retention problem. And so we are going to get ourselves out of this hole over the next year or two. A normal vacancy rate for me for this size of an agency would be 5% or less, right? So we got to get down to where we're well under 10 vacancies consistently. And we're sitting at 12 today. But it seems like 1 step forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back right now, but we're slowly gaining ground.
So that's 6.12% vacancy.
Yeah.
That's good job.
Well, we were at 20% basically. So we were higher than that. So we're getting there now, which feels better. But again, these are all new people. So when you have 20 trainees a year. You have a training officer, you have so many people assigned to train those people. It's a drain on the organization until you get people trained up. So we're still going through some hard times, but we're on the right trajectory.
But this ties in with that, but we noticed when we were looking at the graph in 2021, overtime utilization really seemed to take a significant uptick, and it seems to have stayed there with some fluctuation, of course, but in prior years, it wasn't as prevalent, if I'm recalling the graph correctly. Maybe just talk about what's going on with the overtime dynamics and why they're holding at the levels they are.
Perfect. Yeah. And fire and police do our overtime kind of differently. So they have a different perspective. But for us, we don't have hard minimum standing, so it's minimum staffing. So if someone calls in sick unexpectedly, we don't necessarily call and order somebody to come into work that shift, right? We just run a little bit short or make some adjustments. But we do have pre-planned overtime too for vacations and things where people are prepared to come in and work. It's mostly voluntary still, but we can order people to come into work also. But given what I just said, the vacancies we were going through forced an increased level of overtime. There was a little bit of a cost increase there too. So there was more usage of overtime, but there was also a higher cost for overtime at the same time. I think that basically explains it. I think our number was 4.5 or 4.8 million last fiscal year. If you think about that's 25, 30 cops. So if I had 25 or 30 cops right now, I guarantee you I could lower my overtime rate. And I could fill some pending vacancies and things that I'm carrying in other areas of the department. So it is dependent primarily on the number of vacancies that we have, generally speaking.
Because that was kind of our observation last time is, well, in some ways this seems as simple as hiring up fully, right? Or and having a greater bench. You're saying that's not something that's been feasible to fully staff.
True. So the vacancies are causing that, but also I want to say that if you try to do anything extra as a police department, it's taking overtime. So we created a community violence reduction initiative to try to get ahead of our shootings and our violent crime that's increasing. All the efforts, the proactive efforts that I'm trying to do, it's overtime officers doing that. And so you can't even add anything onto our little base level service without it costing overtime. So it's that also. You're trying to do more for the community with the same resources. So that's also driving overtime.
Thank you.
Would adding security cameras in downtown or even drones help? I mean, I'm thinking like if there's a problem, you can send a drone very quickly and check it out.
Very good. So we have a fairly robust drone program right now. And we found that it works very good in conjunction with some traditional things like canines. So it's for officer safety and for also the efficiency of capturing bad guys. Right? So you can deploy a canine, but you can also have an eye in the sky, and you can find people hiding in bushes without having officers going in there. So it's much safer. And we are getting donations from the foundation, so we can't afford this stuff either. So this year, the Salem Police Foundation, their fundraiser is going to be to add more drones to our program. So we're not even going to pay for that, but. So we're trying to be as efficient as we possible is how we even buy our equipment also. And so we get support from the community in that way, but we want to expand our drone program. In Eugene, they are doing certain cities across the country. A few are trying proactive drone deployment to calls for service. Eugene's doing a little bit of that, but you have to still pilot the drone and have an observer, and you have to have line of sight the whole time. So it's not like you're going to dispatch drones off the top of my building and cover the whole city. You have to have like deployment of drones with teams also. So it's a little bit of a pie in the sky, but I think that's the future what's heading, but we're not there yet. But we do have a drone program that we're working to expand.
Does Eugene hire people, I assume off-site people who command those drones, or is it?
They have sworn officers for the most part, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. They also have 22 more police officers than me. I have a sheet that shows the number of officers each agency our comparators have, and we're the lowest staffing as far as officers per 1,000. So it's just another efficiency topic. If you compare yourself to other cities, we're at the bottom. So to me, it just speaks to how well we do with our limited resources. Actually, we're very, it's not just a cheap police saying we need more resources. The data really does show that we're understaffed.
Efficient.
Chief, could you expand on what the role of the community service officer is in your shop?
Yeah, we talk about privatization, right? This idea, and so we don't have enough of those either. But we have community service officers that you might see that are wearing the light blue shirts, and they don't have guns, right? So they're not sworn police officers, but they're out in the field and they're handling low-level calls. They may handle a traffic accident or a burglary where there's no danger involved. This is just those staffing ratios that I was talking about. And so we need more of those too. And 4 years ago when I arrived, so we had a couple audits. We've had a community policing audit. This is all on our transparency portal. If you ever want to dive into it, there's a couple assessments on there. One is a lot of recommendations of how we should do more community engagement. Another one is our staffing limitations, some recommendations on efficiency and the staffing needs that we have. So I'm speaking to a lot of that as well. One of the recommendations out of that staffing analysis was to increase our CSOs. We had 6 part-timers, I think 4 years ago. 8 part-timers. Grant funded also. This is JAG grant. They were mostly funded through grant money, but they were part-time positions, and they were always viewed as stepping stones to career police work. You get people in college, they can only work part-time, and it worked very well. But I also had experience with career CSOs, people that would be CSOs for 30 years and become experts at it, right? People that want to be cops, but maybe they want to do that. And so we worked to create more full-time positions. We didn't get money for that. So what we've done is we've collapsed some of our part-time positions, created a couple of full-time positions. Now we got a little bit of a mix between part-time and full-time. The same number of personnel hours, but at least we're working on that. I could use another 10 CSOs. So because they handle all those low-level calls to try to free up your police officers for the more acute calls.
And you find that's effective for your full police officers to be able to handle, you're able to staff at a lower cost
Exactly.
employee, okay? Good,
Yeah,
it's working for
Saturday,
you.
if you've seen it in the paper, what happened this Saturday was a good example, right? We had an armed kidnapping suspect who kidnapped his child from his ex-girlfriend, and it took a 3-hour search with a drone, some partner agencies to locate that man and safely take him into custody. Very dangerous individual. That tapped us out. And then we had a protest that continued to get worse throughout the day. We were a little bit behind on response to that because we were dealing with the drone incident or the kidnapping incident. We had to call people in from home to handle the protest, and we had to ask several partner agencies to come in and help us manage that protest until 11 p.m. And then we had a person shot later that night that called my detectives out overnight, and they worked out all night. So you just run out of resources very quickly. And so sometimes you might have a slow night where it feels like you got a few extra resources, but there's other nights where you're just tapped. And that's what we need to be prepared for, is for the busy nights.
Do you get reimbursement? I expect protesters were protesting in front of the state, right? Do you get reimbursed for
Sure.
that?
No, not really,
No.
but we share also. So
Yeah.
OSP helps us out at times too. And so those jurisdictional lines are so blurred right there if you're on the sidewalk or if you're on the street or in the building. So like tomorrow, there's something going on there that we've been planning for with OSP, and we're both providing resources to make sure we stand that. But it's going to be a lot of overtime resources, but we're planning to prepare for that as well in case that protest tomorrow kind of gets larger than we want.
You know, I was surprised. So city hires also security guards, and Keith shared that I thought they're under your command. Would that help if all these various private companies that are hired by the city report to your people?
I think it's
with coordination.
I'm not so sure. And the former city where I worked it was similar, where you have certain areas of city property you're trying to protect, like the library or a parking garage. And it really doesn't make sense to assign officers in there to patrol. You need a security guard. And so just like a private company, when you don't need the police, you hire private security. The city hires private security for certain functions that we really don't need the police. Those are typically managed by the departments or some sort of administrative services outside of the police department, because it's more about facility protection and safety rather than a police concern. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and frankly, I can't think of how I would deploy private security to do the work we do anyway.
Really appreciate everything you're doing, Chief Womack, and
Yes.
incredibly challenging times.
Yes, thank you.
This has been incredibly helpful to learn so much about everything that's going on in the city, and you just wish every citizen could understand, even just the 10-15 minutes you've just given us. It would be so enlightening for everyone. Any other questions for Chief Womack?
Go ahead.
I'll probably bug fire about this same question too, but I'm curious. Have you guys ever had a volunteer program, and what does that look like? Because I know some cities do use volunteers. Is that right?
We do too.
Okay.
So we have, for example, a good number of employees that wash our cars for us, stock our cars for us. They're in our back lot doing that for us every day. So our staff doesn't have to do that. We have volunteers that do a lot of community engagement stuff, so help us do community engagement things too. So like, for example, we have a citizen or a community police academy we try to do a couple of times a year. We've had to pull back to once a year. To be honest with you, we can't even staff that anymore. but the volunteers help us coordinate that logistically. And so there's that type of work that our volunteers help out with. And Brandon?
Well, yeah, there's a number of paperwork, report documentation, so we have reports through support, DFPI, things like that, and they can do database entry for us. We have, for example, speed reader boards, things like that. They can move around the city to areas that need some sort of identification of what the speed rates are in that area. There's a number of things we have. An at-home or a vacation check program where someone goes on vacation, they put in, say, hey, I'm gonna be on vacation for a couple of weeks, and they'll go around, check the house multiple times to make sure there's nothing suspicious going on. We have, I believe we have about 50 volunteers right now that are pretty dedicated to the department, that are serving in all types of capacities. Any chance we get another volunteer, we have assignment for them almost immediately.
We also have a cadet corps, right, which is a career pipeline, but they also volunteer for us on certain kinds of things too. So we have young people that hope to aspire to be police officers someday, maybe not necessarily with us, but that's growing too. It's been more diversified, and coming out of the pandemic, we kind of reinvigorated that program too.
Think about coordination and opportunities. So not what's on your wish list, obviously probably more dollars for more staff, but outside of that opportunity, what else would be on your wish list that would help you?
Right now, to get at some of these bigger problems that we're talking about. So if you're talking about the traffic safety, we're trying to implement a comprehensive strategy with our partners. So you think about the environment, like street design issues, make the streets safer. But then you have education campaign. We have very limited communications capacity, so educational campaign, and also the enforcement piece. There is an important accountability piece. If you're drunk driving, or you're going twice the speed limit, or those people, need to be educated in a different way, and they need to be spoken to by a police officer. So the staff for traffic safety, our traffic team's too small. I'm a former motor officer myself, so my heart's there too. But we need a more robust traffic team. And then also we think about violent crime reduction. We're trying to move into this community violence reduction initiative and leverage community partners as best we can for this prevention side, but there is an accountability enforcement piece as well, and they need a dedicated team that could focus on that. I don't have that right now, so we're all wearing too many hats, right? They get pulled in too many different directions. But generally, I would just say that you mentioned, sir, the 27 to 83 number. What that is, it's from the first audit we had, an independent staffing analysis when they looked at all three of our divisions. We have three divisions. Patrol's the biggest that everybody's most familiar with. And they said 27 to 83 was the range of more officers we need on patrol, just that one division. So you're talking the baseline 27. So I would also just start there. We just need more staff, period. And when you look at these staffing ratios compared to other agencies, you kind of get a feel for that. So I would start there, but then the wish list is as we grew. And I also have a vision for a community policing model in Salem that I think we've heard from our community they want and desire. We have 5 policing districts. I'd love to have we used to have a downtown bike team. I'd like to have a team like that was free from calls for service in all 5 districts, right? So you'd have 5 sergeants with a team of 4 or 5 officers each. It's a lot of people, but a visionary, I would want that so that they could be responsive to geographical areas for problem solving with their community. They could interact with the neighborhood associations and business groups. They could follow up on the lower level livability issues that people care about because they're not slaves to calls for service. That's a robust community policing model that I'd love to implement here in Salem. But that's big dollars.
That's $500.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Of course.
Boy, Chief Womack, I'm something near and dear to my heart is the lack of SROs in the schools. And I know we can't afford to have that right now. So I'm hoping that would be built into this community policing model.
You need a school partner for that.
Yeah.
So if the schools asked for that and supported that, then
Yeah.
I would be open to that too. I would say about another thing about the staffing challenges we're having is we've lost certain funding mechanisms. So when we were excluded from the schools, we also lost the funding for those 8 or 9 positions, right? And then when we used to have a contract with the transit district, for example, when they separate that, you lose a funded officer position. And so we didn't shed those officers from the department. We absorbed that cost into the general fund without that funding stream, right? So we just put more and more pressure on the general fund as we lose those, partner funded positions. It actually hurt the general fund.
And then mental health response team.
Another one. We had 3 officers. So we used to have 2 in Marion County, 1 in Polk County. Each county funded those positions for a co-response model where a police officer and a qualified mental health professional would go to these disturbed person calls together. It doesn't exist anymore, right? And so that hurts us operationally, but also as a funding stream that us as well.
Do you know where those budget cuts from those other agencies?
Those, they're also nuanced, but specific to that, that money came from the feds through the state, so OHA made a decision. It's debatable whether it was a federal Medicaid decision or the OHA, but there was a high level decision made that you could no longer fund police at all in those type of models. It all wants to be non-law enforcement response. So you're seeing counties stand up some other types of teams, but they can't go into the same situations that the co-response model used to go into. So for me, it's a harm for public safety, actually. But that's why it wasn't a decision by city council or the board of commissioners, actually, that those programs dissipated. The funding just couldn't fund that anymore.
Any other questions for Chief relating to potential efficiencies?
Just generally, I'm assuming you probably have a feel for the experience level for your staff, for the sworn officers, and with the turnover, I'm assuming that they're less experienced then.
Yeah, so they're great people. I see wonderful people come into this profession, especially through the times we just went through. And they're mostly local from the region. They have a heart of service. They're very committed, but they are young and new. So they're less efficient and effective as senior officers. It does slow things down, and then there's training behind that takes it away. So I don't want to say anything negative about the staff, but they are new. And that also increases your risk, right? So we have a little higher liability exposure with things too. So we need strong policies, strong oversight at this period as we develop the department of the future, really.
And that is an efficiency issue. I mean, if your organization is like any other one I'm a part of or been a part of, when you're bringing on new people all the time, that's going to draw on you have to spend time bringing them to where everybody else is.
I think
And
we
that's
topped out
not
at
going to
this-
be as efficient.
No, and we've topped out at this higher rate of 20, I think. It's about as many as you can push through that pipeline. And I almost wouldn't want to hire any more than that because you just can't get them through the training and everything.
This isn't, I guess, much of a question, but all the chief's comments made me think about this. Maybe it's for Josh and Keith, but I heard the chief mention two very specific efficiency decisions that the police departments made. They've retracted downtown bike time, and they have volunteers stocking cars. Both of those have dollar figures associated with them. You can do some pretty simple math and find maybe not savings, but it is doing the most they can with a limited resource. I'm assuming that most departments within their purview are making similar kind of decisions or grappling with similar kind of equations. I'm wondering if there's a way, and this kind of goes, I guess, to the communication piece that we talked about at the very beginning, if there's a way to capture some of those just kind of normal course of business efficiency discoveries or efficiency decisions that the city and departments are making to try and extend the taxpayer dollar as far as it can go. Because I do think that is part of what city leaders do on a regular basis, but it kind of gets lost in broader policy discussions and prioritizing and all that jazz. But I think it's a good example of how just part of the city's work is finding how to do more with what they have.
Well, I think it is a communication challenge because a lot of these programs have been around for, many, many years. We just don't talk about them because they've been around forever. So I think you're right. Like oftentimes we talk about volunteers, that volunteer recognition, and then we don't talk about it much after that. So I think it is a communication opportunity to put it out there for how much we leverage volunteers. Because you're right, it's not just police departments, the fire department, the library, Parks and Rec, across the board.
I would love to see something like that in our report at the end of this. Again, it doesn't have to be exhaustive or whatnot, but I think those are good examples that I think it's worthwhile trying to communicate as members of the public who have spent a little bit of time working on this. Like let's at least articulate some of the things we've seen where the city's doing X, well, or doing their best to try and be efficient.
I mean, a couple of the talking points I've used for the past 4 years on that viewpoint really is that doing more with less for a long time, right? And so we used to have a 5-person public relations unit for our department, which is a sergeant, 4 officers, some support staff. They did communications and community engagement. It doesn't exist anymore. It was retracted for core services. I had to cut my last auto theft detective a few years ago. So there's a specialized dedicated auto theft detective. I need that person on patrol now. So this death by 1,000 cut story. I'm sorry, I've used that too much, but it is the idea of over time, what you do when you don't grow, your demands are increasing, but you're not adding staff. You pull back little things and the community doesn't feel it or see it because it's kind of small. But over a course of 15, 20 years, it's you know, who feels it is the staff. The staff definitely feels it very well. So there's a lot of little stories like that. It's even easy to forget them because they just happen every year. Every year we come through this budget process and Josh and Callie will say, okay, zero-sum game, so don't add anything to your budget. And you're like, okay, so you're in effect, you're cutting. Yeah, because, yeah.
Michael, is it part of your question? Is it a question that you're asking though? Is that same thing happening outside the police department? Is that happening in the general services department?
Sure.
Are you asking that?
I mean, it's my assumption that it is, and maybe that's an unfair assumption. Maybe we should ask the question, but I mean, my experience with city government, I see those kind of efforts in the different places I've interacted. But yeah, maybe it's worth a more formal request or some kind of a laundry list. I'm sure there's probably rampant examples out there of how other areas have had to make decisions.
We've probably heard a few, but Keith, it would be helpful if you know some now to share or could bring some to the next meeting.
Yeah, there's definitely a myriad of examples. Christina is going to be stepping forward here in a moment, and she can share. I'm sure Chief Gerbach and what's this guy's name, Brian Carrera, Chief Carrera can share also just what's going on in all of our departments. The death by 1,000 cuts is not unique to me with the police department. It is a management philosophy that the city has been forced to employ for the last 30 years, where we have continually looked for efficiencies and continually looked for ways. Okay, this person, Christian included, has 3 different job responsibilities. Chief was talking about communications. We have 1 communications person in the city manager's office, 1 position dedicated to communication. Ben has 6. So just that 1 function within the city manager's office in one agency to another agency, there's a huge difference in the way that we approach our work and our capacity to deliver on it. And frankly, it's really hard for us to even collect that and communicate that data because we're so busy doing all the other work. It gets really hard just, okay, let's focus resources to tell people how great we're doing and how efficient we're being. No, we have to continue to do the work, otherwise we're falling further behind.
I just want to get away from the table now because I've been here too long.
Yeah, we need to, but thank you, Chief.
Thank you for volunteering your time.
Thank you.
I'm still passing stuff out because I tried to anticipate questions.
Hey, Chief, I just want to compliment you.
Yes.
I live in downtown. I've seen you guys in action, and your guys do an amazing job. They're friendly, they're to the point. They cooperate with YMCA and some other organizations. So, my compliments.
8,400 volunteer hours last year.
Oh, wow.
Okay. All right. Okay, Chief.
All right, well, good afternoon. My name is Dave Gerbeau. I'm honored to be here as your 43rd Fire Chief. I have the distinction of being the highest ranking member of this fire department and also the junior member of this fire department, being appointed on September 23rd of 2024. So we are in the process of hiring. I'll finally get some seniority here pretty soon. I'm joined by Assistant Fire Chief Brian Carrera. Brian Carrera had 20 years in the department, 32 years with the Army as he serves as a major. I had just entered my 33rd year in the fire service. Most recently, I spent the majority of my career with the San Diego City Fire Department. I ended there second in command, overseeing all of our emergency operations in that department with a budget. I managed about $400 million budget with about 1,200 personnel. So coming to here, if we can bring up the PowerPoint, if you don't mind.
Right there on the right.
Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'll just give you a brief overview. I hope I answer some of your questions. I saw a couple ahead of time, so maybe I'll hit those and then we can have a larger discussion. But so if we can just go through on the overview of the Salem Fire Department, we are an all-hazard fire department. We provide dispatch, certainly respond to fires and emergency medical services. We also provide hazardous materials response, technical rescue, wildland aircraft rescue firefighting, as well as we support our friends in the police department with a SWAT medic program, fire investigations, inspections, and then plan review and public education. So this is our number of allocated positions that we have currently throughout our department. We are, July 1st, we will assume the ambulance service within the city. So we're currently onboarding 60 staff to make that happen. We just started February 3rd. On Monday was our first academy to start onboarding those personnel. These are our expenditures for 2024. Sounds like you guys have gone through the budget, so I won't spend much time here. But we do have 2 enterprise funds outside of the general fund. So we are 24/7, 365. So 11 engine companies, 2 ladder companies, and 2 battalion chiefs, soon to be 80 ambulances. The 11 engines, the 2 ladders, the 2 battalion chiefs, that's 24/7, 365. That is the same level of staffing every minute, every hour of the day. We have 3 members on each one of our fire companies. So each one of those 13 fire companies has 3 members. So with that, the 2 battalion chiefs, 41 current staffing every day. So currently we're understaffed by 15 personnel. So that does certainly affect our overtime. We'll explain that. But this was a conscious effort for 2 reasons. One, onboarding 60 members of EMS takes a considerable effort, and we did not have the capacity to hire firefighters and hire EMS at the same time. However, there was a conscious decision not to bring on additional firefighters when the FY26 budget projections could have shown a station closure possibly, or possibly 2. And we didn't want to be in a position where we hired somebody and then laid them off. So that's why we're holding those 15 positions. So any positions that we have that go vacant out of that 41 at any moment of the day, that is filled by overtime. And that is what we call constant staffing. We constantly have 41 members on duty every day to serve the city of Salem. So standards and response, there was a question regarding how do we come up with response time standards. We use National Fire Protection, we use 2 things, National Fire Protection Association and then our ambulance service area. So throughout the National Fire Protection Association, they publish codes and standards overseeing fire service, about 300 different codes and standards. We fall under one of the codes and standards, which is NFPA 1710. Can you go ahead and move that, sir? And that is the organization deployment of career fire departments. So within those standards, there are times that we have that we adhere to. And so that's where a lot of this comes from. The 4-minute travel time, that 240 seconds throughout an organization, 6 minutes for the second company with 4 personnel, which we do not meet, and then 8 minutes for what we call effective fire force. So the 4 minutes is from the fire station, the time you're dispatched until your arrival at scene. This is the travel time. 8 minutes, when we talk about effective fire force, that is based on understanding how many personnel it takes to effectively put out a fire. And depending on whether it's a single family dwelling, an apartment fire, a high rise, or different standards that adhere to that. With our EMS, also the 4 minutes and 8 minutes, we'll talk about the ambulance service area. And but those are within NFPA, and we also adhere to those with the ambulance service area. We'll move to the next one. So why do the times matter? These aren't, we didn't make them up in Salem. These are national standards. A fire size typically can double every minute. So it's critical that we get there quickly. Flashover is when an area of a room reaches an ignition temperature simultaneously and the room flashes, oftentimes extending throughout the structure. And so once that happens, you have approximately 10 seconds to get to safety. This is an extremely dangerous situation. And so this is what we're trying to avoid. As far as EMS, we know that brain damage starts within 4 to 6 minutes and permanent damage after 10. And that's why we have those response standards. And then early defibrillation with AEDs and CPR in conjunction, 70% survival rate within 3 to 4 minutes. So we talk about the 4-minute drive time within the city. So these are our fire station locations currently, all 10 stations, or I'm sorry, all 11 stations. And if you look at the yellow, this is outside of our 4-minute standard. So the rest of it is the urban growth boundary, and you can see. So certainly Illahee is out there. It's hard to get to. Creekside are difficult. This area here is our next area that really needs to be covered. It's our #1 area to be covered. So when we look here in the 2022 safety and livability bond, within that bond was 2 fire stations. The replacement for Fire Station 8, which this is not in the city. So Fire Station 8 is at Chemeketa College. That engine's staffed there. Our replacement is actually going to move into the city, so this 4-minute response time is going to be taken care of. We're going to have good service over here, and then Station 12, which is provided for in that bond, is going to end up in this area, and that's going to provide for that 4-minute coverage. So strategically, that's what we're looking at moving forward to provide the coverage for the city. Go to the next. Okay, this is our car load. So 2011 is kind of a year for us. 2011 was the first year that we had the staffing, all 11 stations that we have currently. So since 2011, our call volume has gone up 98%. We've had 98% increase in call volume, but our on-duty staffing has dropped by over 4.5%. So we used to have 43 on duty. Now we have 41. So when we talk about doing more with less, I mean, we're doing double the workload that we did in 2011. So as you see, when obviously our calls are going up, our response times are going down. We'll go to the next one here. And what we have is a lot of concurrent calls. So, the first call comes in Station 5's district, the second call comes in Station 5's district, the third call, and now we're pulling companies from across the city. Obviously, our response times are going to increase during that time. This is just our breakdown of all the different incidents that we go to. Go ahead to the next one here. And then our dollar loss, and then some of the other incidents we have. So we have about $25 million loss, fire loss last year. Some comparable agencies, I just got this morning, I'm sorry, so I can certainly help clarify this and answer questions in the future. But Tempe, Arizona, very similar to our size. Their population is 189, we're about 183. And their call volume is very similar, 31. We were at 33. Their overtime budget for fiscal year 25 is $4.5 million. They have 54 personnel staffed every single day for the same size organization. So just one. Eugene, obviously our closest neighbor that is of a similar size. Their call volume, that 31,000 is, they count their calls a little bit differently, where that's just in the city limits, 31,000. Our 33,000 includes outside of this, it's any call we went on. So there's about 3,000 additional calls that outside of Eugene responded to. So they're roughly about the same as us. Their overtime budget, actually their actuals for FY24 was $7.7 million, 102,000 hours. Right now we're about 30,000 hours.
Give or take.
Yeah, give or take. So yeah, we're probably half. You're going to be maybe somewhere around half. But with Gresham, obviously less of a population, but their call volume is comparative, and that's their overtime budget for FY25. I just didn't have time to get Medford or Ben, but the call volumes you can see. Kaiser, obviously not necessarily comparable, but 7,200 calls for 39,000 population. They're already at 650,000 year to date for FY25 for their overtime. Go ahead and move here. So when we talk about our ambulance service area, so we're into 2 ambulance service areas. One is overseen by Marion County, and one is overseen by Polk County. Both we fall into the urban, which is 8 minutes of response time for advanced life support to arrive. So when we arrive with our first responder vehicle, that's our engine companies typically, and we show up with ALS, we can stop the clock or slow down the clock for the ambulance to arrive. These are contractual obligations that we have with the county, and if we don't meet them, then we could lose our ambulance service area. This is just our ambulance service area. These are the ones that are in the area, and then Salem, obviously, in the middle there. And Salem just being urban is what we're showing here in that 8-minute requirement. So some of the future efficiencies either under consideration or doing right now. Right now, we are doing what we call a standards of cover. This is a comprehensive review of the department. It looks at our threats, our vulnerabilities. It looks at our current resource levels, compares them to national standards, and then comes up with recommendations on how to meet those national standards. That is going to feed into a department strategic plan as we move forward over the next several years on what we want to do, incremental increases that we can get to. We know that we can't do it all at once, but we do need a roadmap, absolutely. We do not have a current strategic plan. That is certainly coming. Alternative service models. I came from an organization that had a very well-developed public health division under EMS, where we had alternative service delivery. That is something we certainly want to pursue with now taking over our ambulance service and doing reimbursements, we can reinvest into the system. So the vision of that would be things such as 2-person response vehicles throughout the city that will free up our heavy equipment. Sir, you talked about what is your utilization of resources, right? And so when we look at our National Fire Protection Association, we call it unit hour utilization rates. 7 of our 10 engines have met the requirement to add another engine company. So we know we're busy. This would be to take those calls off of those companies and hopefully reduce that call load and make them available for those incidents where we need a fire engine. Obviously funded through EMS is what we're looking for, and then fill the 15 vacancies to reduce overtime. That's the number one way to reduce overtime in the fire service is to hire, because we have vacancies we have to fill because they're constantly staffed. I will say with the fire service, we are unique in that with the Fair Labor Standards Act, firefighters are paid differently, and that overtime does not kick in after 40 hours like it normally does. It kicks in after 212 hours out of a 28-day cycle. So it's an average of 53 hours a week. So firefighters do not get overtime until they cross over that approximately 53 hours a week, but it's over 212 hours over 28 days. So interagency collaboration with mutual aid partners. I will tell you, we have not done a great job about interacting with our partners over the years. We've certainly improved that over the last several months. We are working very closely with our partners. We talked about alternative service delivery and alternative funding sources. So we have not looked at our fees for fire inspections for over 20 years. We're looking at those. We're also looking at our communication center fee structure to make sure that we're making ourselves whole and that we're not cheating ourselves out of any revenue. Go to the next one here. So we would look at this is one of the efficiencies I think is really important. When we look at this is a map of obviously Salem. These 2 stations out here on the east, that's Marion County Fire District 1, and this is Kaiser right here. Right now, we're responding to our own incidents, right? If it's in Salem, we send a Salem fire engine. If it's in Marion County, we send a Marion County fire engine. I mean, there's areas in Marion County could be going right next to a Salem fire station. It's not efficient. It's not the best way to do business. I've been working very closely with Chief Russell up in Kaiser, Chief McMahon in Marion County. We're working toward July 1st, turning on what we call automatic aid, and that is regardless of jurisdiction. It doesn't matter what the patch is on the side of the door. It's the closest resource at the time. We now have a new computer-aided dispatch system. We're using GPS and auto vehicle locators. We know where we are. So we're working through that to make sure that we're using our resources in the best way, not just for this community, but all of our communities in this region. Go to the next one. So volunteer consideration. So we do also use some volunteers. We have volunteers that are helping out with our training division. They're doing data entry downtown. We just engaged with a volunteer who used to teach grant writing. And so we just met with her last week. We're working with her in the Salem Fire Foundation. We also have a foundation, much like police department does, to help fill some gaps. Our breakfast is on the 14th, the day after theirs. I would recommend you come to ours and not theirs, but you can go to both. I think probably both would be great, right? Yeah. So, but we're doing the same thing, knowing that the budgets are tight and we're not going to be able to get everything we need. And so we're looking at creative ways to fill those gaps, certainly grants, efficiencies, Fire Foundation, and doing that. Volunteer firefighters, I will tell you, with the agencies that have them, what we call a combination department, they're trying to phase them out for mostly. It's not, it's just, they're not dependable. It's a constant rotation. For what we do, we would have to put them through training and then hopefully depend that they would show up on the days we want. The skills proficiency are not going to be equal. Mr. Gay, I think I have at least I think of the comparison to Salem Health, where when I think of overtime, you have minimum staffing levels for nurses, right? You have a staffing ratio, and so you have to pay overtime to make sure that. Same with, I don't think there's probably too many ER or operating room nurses that are volunteers. These are highly skilled professionals that you have in the Salem Fire Department. We're providing advanced life support. My hair grows pretty quick. I'm not going to get cut by a volunteer. I probably don't want a volunteer showing up in an emergency, but there certainly are places that we are using to help relieve our staff within the fire department, absolutely. And then certainly open for any questions or discussions related to our operations or anything to discuss.
I do have a couple. If,
Yes, sir.
going back to the first slide, I think on efficiencies. I think you had Tempe at 54.
Oh, yeah, go up. Yeah, if you want to go up. That was other agencies.
And I couldn't remember what's our number on
41.
on duty, 41.
I
Okay.
will tell you, so I came from an organization before this. Every one of our companies had 4 firefighters on it. That's a national standard. Tempe has 4, as well as some other organizations. Medford just went to 4. Portland has 4. Gresham is looking at it with their levy. They're trying to add some people there. So that is a national standard. We are doing more with less in the city, for sure. We have a very thin administrative staff. We have a very thin operational staff. The men and women in this department really put out every single day, and they're doing more with less. And I would say scrappy is probably a good description of what's here, but they are providing outstanding service, but it's doing it certainly thin.
And then the second one, relating to Eugene, what the number you gave, I don't remember, but I think we were about half on the overtime hours.
We're about 30,000 right now.
30, less than half. Okay. And yet if I remember right, our overtime is at about 6.5 million in
That was
cost.
combined with police and all departments.
Oh, that was, okay. What are you at on
Yeah,
just fire?
0.2 is what we're predicting for, well, go ahead, Brian's.
Right now, we're predicting to spend 5.2 million, but that's made up of conflagration, EMS and everything. So I predict we'll spend $4 million in overtime per fire alone this year.
Okay.
So.
What I'm just,
EMS is not in the general fund.
That's,
what
yeah,
the difference
EMS and
is.
Conflag
Yeah.
are 2 separate entities that we deploy that general fund gets reimbursed for.
what I'm just trying to get at is our overtime more expensive for some reason?
No, it's not. No, and
Okay.
we're in line. Obviously, the 15 vacancies that we have,
Yeah.
that helps create overtime. right?
Massively,
If we had
yeah.
those filled, it would be lower. I will tell you, no matter how many people we have, well, if we have overstaffed, it would be different. But right now, there are, with constant staffing, if somebody's off, we have to have somebody there. And with the protected leave programs that exist to benefit our employees, that is a driver too. Right now, we have 19 members on Family Medical Leave Act. 19 members that we have to fill every single day, right? We have Oregon paid leave, right? That's 12 weeks that we could have one of our members goes off, and they do, right? We have our members are having children. They're gone for 12 weeks taking care of the children. I wish I got that retroactively. I have 3 kids. So those are certainly drivers of overtime, but we're well in line. I will say one of the benefits of overtime is you only use it when you need it. Where if you overstaff, there are times you have more people than your minimum staffing. You're still having to pay for their pension, their medical benefits. With overtime, you're simply paying for the hours you make.
So if you were to pick 3 things, so you're us,
Mm-hmm.
and we're tasked with trying to identify efficiencies in the use of general funds. And you oversee this department, what would your top 3?
Well, it's a good thing because I do oversee this.
Well, yeah,
So that's
that part is not hypothetical.
Yeah.
But what are the top 3 things that you could look at? And Chief
Without
Womack,
any
I might.
increase in revenue, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. If you had to say, look, I can see potentially a way to be more efficient here, even if they're not guaranteed to do so. If you were to pick 3, what would they be?
Well, the number one, and we're moving toward it, is working better with our partners. That is the number one way that we're going to be the most efficient for this region, not just for the city of Salem, but for all of our partners here. And that's auto aid. That's making sure that we're not worrying about jurisdictional boundaries. I would say the second, which we have not done in the past and we're just engaging on, as I mentioned, is looking at grants. There are assistance for firefighter grants that provides equipment. There are the federal staffing adequate for fire and emergency response called the SAFER grant that actually helps offset the personnel costs. We have not looked at that before, and we're going to look at that. So those absolutely. And then actually funding through either state or federal for responses to alternative service delivery, where I think if we can get look at a public health, look at a 2-person squad that can start taking that call load off of these other pieces of equipment, I think that's going to be a certain benefit to the community.
And just to make sure I understand, alternative service delivery, basically taking the expense that maybe is going toward something right now that could actually benefit from a less expensive service.
Well,
Meaning like I got to send a truck right now to a particular need and
yes.
I'm pivoting to something else that might be less
Correct.
costly.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be in place of that, but it would be a more efficient way to respond so that we can lessen the response on those and then free that up so that we don't have, a doubling call rate with a lesser staff. So,
Right. Yeah.
We talked about earlier, kind of this alternative delivery, at an earlier meeting. That's a lot of the calls, 80% of the calls were not fire related.
Yeah, 74% of our calls are medically related. That is true.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the fire service today, right? And so in the 70s, when we started getting into paramedicine, that is just part of what we do. It became a huge part of it. It's part of why we have such great delivery model for medical delivery. But yes, 74% are medical. That is correct.
The spike happened in 21.
It did.
And stayed. Is this mental health calls that can be served, not maybe with a big truck?
So great. So coming from an area we had public health, right? We had 3 functions. If you'll give me some grace.
Yeah.
So within our emergency medical service division, we had 3 functions of public health. One was we had
That's where you
responders.
came from.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we had what we call community paramedics, and they responded to our highest utilizers of 911. So we would go preventatively, we would get them into treatment, we would get them out of the system. So right now, even in ours, we have, I think, it's a small percentage of our users cause a large percentage of calls. And so, I wish I would have brought it, but so,
Are they
but-
not
it's-
emergency room level?
right, or we can contact them beforehand and get them to the right services,
Yeah.
right? So we reduce call volume that way by reducing 911 calls, but also reducing the inundation of our emergency rooms that are certainly busy. The second thing we did was we had practitioners for mental health. And so we would go out, we would do mental health assessments, we'd get them into treatment, and then take them out of the 911 system as well. And then the third thing we did in California is called conservatorship. In Oregon, it's called civil commitment. Different laws, but we know that there are people that are unable to take care of themselves, and we would go through a judicial process that got them forced into treatment. So I definitely see on that high utilizer of 911 is a great place to start. I have a list of these addresses that we go to more than any, and we start contacting those people and try to get them out of the 911 system.
So can you do that here?
Well, with the right people, with right now, we're just at a point where we just have the minimum staffing reported to operations and 911 calls. But that would be the intent on revenue out of the EMS system in the future, is to reinvest it to provide those added services.
I'm curious what you think. I mean, you covered that you're gonna cooperate with county better. So I was contemplating, obviously, we don't have money. Even if the bond or the levy passes, it will take care of things for a few years and then losses are going up and up, which scares me very.
Yeah.
So I came with one idea. How about, for example, Station 10 on State Street is very close to Station 1 of Marion County.
Yeah.
Then Station 3 on, I cannot even read my handwriting, is close to Marion County Station 8.
Yes.
How about closing 2 stations?
Yeah. So I will say,
But keeping your people, nobody will
Right.
lose jobs because obviously we are short.
exactly, well, I can go back, but I will say, so let's go back to the map real quick. I'm sorry, it's the other way. Yeah. So, okay, so right now, Station 8, our Station 8, we're actually moving it over here, right? So that one's not really a factor. It's gonna fill in this area. You're right. 10, they're right, they're pretty close to each other over here. Now that with this annexation that just happened, it's actually, I mean, I could throw a rock at it over there, right? Is there an opportunity to do that? I will tell you long-term, when we look long-term, which I think we all need to be doing strategically because of what you just mentioned, right? we have done some studies to look at, for example, a fire district. Would that be a more efficient way to fund fire suppression in Salem? We've done a couple studies and it didn't really pan out. But what we've never done is look at what if we did a fire district with Salem, Kaiser, and Marion County all together and work as a capital region. Would that be? And so I just engaged with those fire chiefs and we've had that discussion. I think we're going to look at, I haven't even talked to Steve. I apologize, city manager. We haven't had this discussion, but these are
thinking the same thing.
But we have the discussion about, hey, I think maybe it's time to do a study to know, should we just have a capital region fire district where we're taking all of our efficiencies and working together? So I think there's certainly some options out there. We're looking long-term for that. But you're right. And that is, co-locating units is certainly an opportunity to do that. Right now, I can just tell you, we don't have the room, just how we built our facilities. It just won't work right now. But that doesn't mean that it can't.
Okay.
Yeah. I will well, just as an example, City of Gresham and the city of Portland share a contiguous border, and they have a joint fire station that has a Gresham engine and a Portland engine. It's certainly possible, and we've already definitely have this.
And I think it improves cohesion, because I think now we are like, okay, this is not my address, you go.
And that's
where's the ownership of all communities?
So, and that's the only reason we're waiting till July 1st to turn this on, is because being through it before, I know that if we just turn it on and said, hey, we're all now gonna just start going together, it's like you have personalities and everything. So right now we're in a training program where we're all working together, we're all getting to know each other. And so when the bell goes off on July 1 and we all go to the same house fire, we're all gonna operate seamlessly and we're not gonna have those issues.
We're getting pretty close to the end of our time and we have a new guest. Would you tell us your name?
Krishna Namburi.
Krishna? Okay. I assume you have some things to share with us. Okay. Chief, thank you for your time. Much appreciated. Really quickly, Krishna, if you want to come up, Chief Womack, I should have given you the same opportunity. And in both your cases, I want to say, my question about efficiency is not, I hope you'll receive that not as an indication that I think you're being inefficient, but you're probably in the best place to say, if there is any efficiency, where is it? So same question to you, if you were to pick your top three.
Even the assessment we had some efficiency recommendations in there that we've already been through. So one of them was reconfiguring our shifts to 12-hour shifts. So you take officers that this frankly didn't work out for us. We did 12-hour shifts for a year and then we reverted back. So we did test it out. We had the data. It just drove people into the ground. For this busy of a city to be working 12-hour shifts was just too much. But on paper, it is a more efficient model. You can get more hours out of people if they're working 12 hours. It just didn't work operationally for us, for even just the work-life balance with our staff. But we did try it. Like we actually did a pilot for 12 months. Another one is online report, finding alternative call response, more CSOs, for example, more ways to not have officers go to calls, more CSOs, a new online reporting system. We're implementing that as we speak. We're doing a more robust online reporting system so we can try to divert more calls through online reporting. Those are the types of things that we're already doing. And some of those recommendations came out of the audit. So I don't have a lot of new to offer, honestly. We're constantly looking at efficiencies, but things like that, ways to have police officers handle more high acuity calls with professional staff supporting our online systems, new technologies, and always analyzing our shift structure. So we went back to 10-hour shifts, but we did it based up. We had a company come in and help us assess our workload and our call load, try to be as efficient as we can with our hours that our officers are assigned to also. So we just did that recently.
I'm curious with both of you. Can you charge for service like in Europe? If cop shows up to accident site, do you get a bill? They showed up, they helped you out, and there you go. The same for like false call. My cat is up in the tree. Can you charge me for getting my cat?
I would never charge you to get your cat, but and I'm a dog person. I still wouldn't charge you. So we
have a dog to get the cat.
There are departments that use what they call a fee-for-service model.
Yeah.
We have looked at it, and we have had the discussions about implementing that. And it would be it would probably be about, the charge would maybe be $500 for going in a traffic accident or a structure fire, for example. That would be charged only if they had insurance, right? There is certainly political discussions with that, right? Some people feel that their tax is already paid for that. So that exists. There are some
Even
fees.
charge if it is false call.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
There you go,
correct.
right?
False alarms, especially when they're repetitive.
Yeah.
If it's somebody that has a system that is calling us constantly, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so
We are
let's put
pursuing
that together. So I would put that on our list of deficiencies.
Viable option there is things that are associated with insurance. Usually that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Not a public safety service that you provide your tax dollar rate. That's just my thought.
But on
And
top
it would
of that,
help people. I had a situation where I call cops in accident, they're like, it's not, nobody's hurt, you're not gonna show up.
Yeah.
But if you show up,
That's right.
people are happier and you get money.
but it does cause.
It's that simple.
It is a way to-
It's not
but-
simple, chief.
It is a way to collect more money, but you're also putting more of a workload in your personnel to
I
file
know,
paperwork.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you have to be able to do that if you're asking for
Good
more of
point,
your
yeah.
people. So I'm in support of it, but there is a balance.
They're usually cost neutral, and you're not really allowed to make a profit as a police agency, and so
Yeah.
usually you're recovering costs.
More recovering, yeah. And like you guys have to fill out the report, like to bill insurance for emergency, right?
Yeah,
Anyway,
for medical,
so why
yes.
not to just put another check there?
All right, will you repeat your name and tell us your role?
Yeah, before I start, I have to say it's never a good idea to go after police and fire. They're not that exciting to talk about. But thank you. Good afternoon, Krishna Namburi. I'm the Deputy City Manager for Enterprise Services Department. Enterprise Services Department consists of IT, HR, fleet, facilities, risk, customer service center, and other services. I have been with the city for like 25 years. I actually finished 25 on January 1st of this year, or 2nd of this year. So before I know you have a lot of questions about IT, but I just want to take like just 30 seconds to talk about when prior to being in this role, I was the IT director for 10 years for the city. So the department is 4 years old, Enterprise Services Department. And so this was, I think in 2021, we consolidated several departments under one umbrella. That is all the most of the internal services together. So when I started overseeing this, all of these departments, the number one need is really addressing the operational needs, because the internal services has been understaffed for many years. And this is kind of my 25 years of being here. Like, that is the constant thing that we kind of deal with. And Josh can talk about that from a finance perspective too. So our goal was to address the immediate operational needs and also increasing the operational efficiencies. And was pretty clear that we had a lot of budget constraints. So in that attempt, what we did, we merged several departments under one umbrella and also moved positions between, just to be able to kind of create those efficiencies within the department. So I just kind of want to start with that. Coming to IT, I think a couple of questions that what I see that you would like to know why the IT costs have increased over the years. And then also some questions about outsourcing IT. So I think those are the two that you are interested in. So if there are other questions that you have, I'm more than happy to answer, but I'm going to start from this. So with the, just to kind of go back, the IT department provides services to both general fund departments and as well as non-general fund departments. So general fund departments like public safety, police, fire, and finance, legal, and non-general fund departments like public works. And so we provide services to all the departments. I just kind of want to start with that. There are several factors that contributed to the what you see in the cost of increases for the IT department. Prior to 2015, and this was something that I had taken on as a department head. The technical positions some technical positions were in the individual departments. Like public works had their own technical person, and police had their own, library had their own. So in an attempt to create more efficiencies and consistency with how we were serving the departments, I could see some duplicate work that's being done between the department. departments and the IT department, right? So we were trying to create some efficiencies there. So we decided to kind of move all of those positions under IT. So that's, I don't have how many positions were added to the IT department, but we did do that. So that's kind of one. And the second reason was as the demand for technology kept increasing over the past 10 years, all of the departments started relying on technology more than before, and I think we all can understand that. So non-general fund departments like Public Works, 911 Center, Building and Safety, they were struggling to get services from the IT department. So the solution was they were going to fund IT positions. So we added close to 13 positions over the years as part of that. That's not, those are, even though that's under IT department, they are the department, the Public Works and other departments pay for those positions. So what you would see is it kind of appears like number of FTE for the IT department has increased over the years, but that's kind of a result of consolidation of the technical resources from other departments to the IT, and then also non-general fund departments adding their own technical positions, and that's kind of what increased the number of FTE. There, we haven't added many positions to the general fund departments, even though the technology needs have increased. We did add some, but I don't think it's like significantly like higher. So that's kind of what the transition that has gone. The other factor that contributed to the cost, definitely the software costs are increasing, and more vendors are, and I'll talk about that in a minute. When we enter into any kind of a contract with a vendor, they always give the best deal, right? We always have the best deal that first year. And after that, once they got us, and the costs increase exponentially. And that's something that we struggle on an ongoing basis, especially when it comes to the government agencies. That is something that has been a struggle for many, many years. When I started overseeing the IT department, the one thing, and this is like back in 2010 or maybe 2009, we were heavily relying on consultants. So we had IT staff. There was significant reliance on consultants, and back then it was like significant amount of time. Significant amount of dollars. So my initial, like the goal with that was I wanted to create a self-sufficient IT where we are reducing the cost of operations for the city. So in an attempt to do that, we just went back, we don't use consultants. It's our $0 spent on external consultants for the IT department, because we were spending quite a bit of money, and also that just increased the cost of operations for the IT. So that was the shift that we kind of went through. So that's kind of the history of the IT department. And I know I only have like a few minutes, but I'm just going to talk about the outsourcing component of it. And before I get to that, the piece that the enterprise services department works on, not just the IT department, but over the years, our mission has been consistent, which is it's not about reducing the IT costs or the HR costs, but it is reducing the long-term cost of operations for city services. So what that means is if there is something that we can do as a department for police to operate efficiently or the fire to operate efficiently, that's kind of where we want to invest our time. It's not about just our departments, it's about the city of Salem. How can we reduce that cost of services for the city? So that's kind of what the staff are trained to do. That's kind of how we operate. With the outsourcing, the reason why we are very careful about it and is there are several factors that we have to kind of weigh in what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. For example, the cloud services versus on-prem. Anytime there is an opportunity for us to reduce the cost, and if we could go cloud, we do that. But if it makes sense for security reasons to keep it on-prem, we kind of keep those services here. With outsourcing, there are several factors that we have to consider. Like I said, it is cheaper initially, but over a period of time, it does increase the cost, and then we have no control over it. And that's something that, for me, that's a concern because there is no, we can't really plan what it is going to be. And switching back is very costly. And we also kind of had conversations where, as we get into the kind of the contract piece of it, even on the cloud services, we can go on the cloud, but if you have to retrieve the data back, that is extremely expensive, and that's where they get you. And so we are very careful about like not jumping into something without evaluating what is that, is it good for the city over a period of time.
When you sign the deals for services, do you use the clause, I forgot the name, I think it's called the best deal clause or equal deal clause, where the provider is required to give you as best price as for any other municipality or even the state?
Do you want to talk about that, Josh?
So it really depends on the services. It's really hard to get apples to apples comparisons. So we use collective purchasing where we can, or cooperative agreements with the state purchasing agreement. But oftentimes we go out for a separate RFP because we're looking for specific services. But we do compare to other negotiated contracts.
So just to kind of add on to that, our department, and I'm very proud of the staff and the work that they do. Over the past 15 years, when it comes to negotiations, and we have been very aggressive, including Callie has been part of ERP negotiations in within the past few weeks, but we do negotiate every contract. We just don't go by default, like whatever they offer. So the other piece of it is like the responsiveness for the services that we provide, especially public safety, and we have to be responding to the needs immediately, right? And even if we can have a service level agreement with the vendors, it is difficult to enforce that. We have difficulty enforcing, even with the software purchases. When we enter into the contract, they could be agreeing to XYZ, but to enforce that level of service, it is difficult. So that's something that we need to think about. And for me personally, like I'm very cautious about security and data privacy risks. And I would like for the data to stay in the United States, but a lot of times they don't guarantee that. So we are cautious about not entering into something like that. The other piece is like the institutional knowledge. For many of the services that we provide, our staff are in-house, they're housed in the departments. They know how police provide, fire provides, public works provides. So there is definitely that efficiency in understanding how the business is and then making changes accordingly. So I just kind of want to stop there. I know you had a question about the efficiencies, like what it would be like
yeah, sure. Same one for you. If there's
for questions, but
three.
So the past couple of years, as soon as the AI, technology has been introduced over the past 2 years, so we actually jumped on that very quickly, and the staff have done a lot of work in learning what the technology is and how we can bring that to the city. So we see significant opportunities with this technology, and we are already, our goal is every department in the city is overworked. And as HR director, I can also kind of talk about that. It is, everybody is doing 2 to 3 jobs. It's not just one, everybody is doing that, most people. So our goal is to bring relief to that staff workload because we are seeing retention issues. And we are losing more and more talented staff. So bringing some of the AI tools and technologies to help with the staff workload is the #1 goal right now. And also we want to bring those opportunities and the efficiencies for the departments to be able to serve the community better. So we are kind of working on that. And we know that we don't have resources to invest into it, but we have done some really good work. And I want to thank my management team on that, where we were able to restructure some resources to dedicate a couple of resources on AI so that we can focus on the overall city operations. So I'm excited about that opportunity. We are already making some, we could figure out that where there's one FTE that we don't have to fill. Our goal is, for the enterprise services department, our goal is not to increase the number of FTEs, but use AI to give relief to the to the employees, right? So that we can increase our services. The other thing that constantly talk about is streamlining process. I think there is always that opportunity for streamlining process, but that requires significant amount of resources to do it. So I don't have a solution that we can do without adding resources. But on the AI side of it, I'm very excited that we were able to get a couple of resources lined up to work on it, just to kind of give that relief. And we did not add any resources there. We just used our existing resources to do that. So I'm going to stop.
That was great. Any questions for Krishna?
Kind of curious about turnover. It seems like there's a number of open positions constantly, so I'm assuming that might be because of a lot of turnover. What is the turnover rate and how does that compare to other cities?
Yeah, I don't have that number with me, but there is definitely over the past like 18 months, we lost actually many of our tenured staff. And I personally, in my department, I lost 2 FTE that have been here for like 15, 20 years because it was just not worth it, right? And I'm also concerned about losing more people through this process. So, but I don't have that number, but it is significant right now. And that is inefficient for the city. And
Yeah, no, that's what I'm thinking. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
plus it's just creating more burnout, as you indicated, and leading to more turnover too. So,
What are the AI opportunities that the staff we're working on are identifying? Where do they think they can?
Yeah, so for selfish reasons, we decided to go with HR first because our HR department is significantly understaffed. So we are in the process of deploying an HR chatbot so that as employees have questions, they don't have to call the HR analyst, but there is a chatbot that they can interact with to kind of answer some of the basic questions. And then we are also looking at creating a solution for staff reports for council, because there's a lot of time that is spent by the staff to, provide those. So we are kind of looking into that solution. We also, and again, I want to give kudos to the IT staff on this. We were going to go with the ChatGPT, and that was like $400 per year per user. If we go with the ChatGPT subscription, our staff created a Salem GPT, custom GPT, and we did not, and that's a very lower cost. So we are actually just did a pilot program with 56 people, and we are going to deploy that to the department. I think around to the city. We are assuming like 500 people are going to be part of that program. So, and of course, it took us like almost 6 months to do that because we had to have the policies in place and the protocols in place because explainability is a huge thing with AI. We just can't just deploy without having that. So because of that piece, it took us some time. But so those are the 3 things that are kind of active.
This feels like an obvious question, but just to make sure we check this box. When you do significant moves for efficiency, like consolidating IT professionals out of siloed departments into a singular department, do we make sure that in fact the savings desired to be achieved in the relinquishing departments are achieved? Does that make sense? Meaning, if the budget for that department was $50 million and we took $1 million of IT out of it, I'm just throwing numbers around, and we put that cost inside the consolidated IT department, did we look back and make sure that the budget of the budget of the relinquishing department went to 49 million? Does that make sense?
So I mean, just really quickly, we have a very strict position control that we maintain for the city. So each fund has an authorized position count. So when you move it, it's a very structured move in the budget process to the other department, and the budget moves with it. And then the corresponding transfer from that fund for that position. So
Okay.
It's really hard to tease out after the fact because there's other operational changes, but I can guarantee like a different position didn't pop up to fill that spot.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense.
Are
Thanks.
there opportunities to combine systems with county or even city of Kaiser? Do we have notification systems where we are working hard on our side and they're working as hard on their side? For the same.
Yeah.
You get the point.
I'm glad you asked the question because when I came to the city in 2000, on 1999, I have to say, I came as a consultant, and at that time, the systems were together. Our ERP system was together between county and city, and it was supposed to be for more efficiencies. But I think because of, that also requires like a tremendous amount of collaboration between the two agencies and have an understanding of the common goal and how we want to move forward. And that was challenging at that time. So we decided the city and the county decided to go with the data center, had a data center for both of them together, decided to part ways. And
Is that more expensive?
that was becoming more expensive because the county and city had hard time understanding the thing. And also we were
But parting the
maintaining-
way meant that you now have to pay separately, right, for the systems.
we had to, at that time, we had to pay
Yeah.
separately.
Yeah.
And just to go back, most vendors right now, it's a different model than 2000. Even if you put it together, they will charge the price that it's not going to be together.
Yeah, it's based on user and instances,
But I
right?
think but it's records, like, I have probably the same record with county and then with the city and the hospital. It's all the same people that live around here. That's what I think. Maybe I'm correct, maybe I'm not.
I mean, that's a challenge even within the city systems, right? If you buy a building permit and pay your water bill and get a traffic ticket, those are all three separate identities
systems,
basically
yeah.
you have with city systems. So that's something we're working on in the future
Yeah.
is how to combine it so you might see everything all in one.
Yeah.
All at once.
I think generally speaking, that's something to look at, just like Fire talked
Yeah.
about. Potential efficiencies by better collaboration between agencies or even within city departments. And it sounds like that's being considered. We're out of time and past time. First of all, thank you.
Yes, thank you
And
very
that
much.
feels pretty trite, frankly. I'm thanking you for your time, but I'm thanking you for everything that you guys do, which is, we only see this much of. So I hope that conveys with the sincerity I intend, what I intend. As far as our next steps, going back to the question we left with at the beginning, if we are allowed the budget to do it, I think that I would suggest we use our meeting on Friday to really try to refine what we think our list is, and then somebody from the group take a stab at putting that to writing, circulate it through staff for a final meeting next week, at which we just finalize what it is we believe we want to recommend to the city council. Any thoughts about that approach?
I'm in favor with one addition or something I'll be thinking about between now and Friday is not just a list, but like kind of little messages that we would, in this
Agreed.
experience, kind of.
Totally agree.
What have we observed? You know,
Yeah.
like, yes, the city is rampant with waste, or maybe it's not, and maybe there's some measures opportunity, things like.
Yeah, whatever the
Right,
general conclusions are,
Yes, yeah.
in addition to just a list of questions.
yeah,
I
some observations.
completely agree. Yep,
Does
completely.
it make sense to try and send some of those in to like Brian just individually before next meeting, like just some thoughts so we have something to work off of, as opposed to just trying to
It might be
spitball it
better
in the
to send
meeting?
it to us.
There you go.
Yeah.
I do too. It's definitely better to send it to them.
Like, Callie.
Sorry, Callie.
No, all good. That's why we're here.
So
Uh,
you're okay if we do that, send some
Yeah.
thoughts or?
Absolutely.
Then should we just have a draft? We can just kind of.
Yeah, one more
work off
document
of.
or something, however we want to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, we'll have something prepared to share with you all on Friday.
I suggest we ask Josh and Kelly the same question about top three efficiencies on Friday.
Yeah,
Today.
okay, great.
I get some prep time.
Yeah, sorry, didn't give that to you. All right, so, so are we in agreement on one more additional meeting if we can get approval for the time? I'm not thinking an hour and a half. I'd like it to be like half hour. That may be totally time optimism.
Talking about being efficient. I need more time.
Probably an hour. Okay. Are we okay to try to set that? And if so, can you assist us in scheduling it?
Yep, absolutely. We'll send out a doodle poll so you can, yeah, especially since next week, we can figure out when people are ready.
Okay. All right. Let's adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you.